So, hi, everybody. My name is Denise Morales, and I am the founder of Be Nurtured, which is my nonprofit that focuses on mental health resources and to bring that into communities that are underrepresented and just provide psychoeducational opportunities for people to learn about mental health. And then tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you for having me here. And I'm Vitor, guys. I am the host of the Student Counselor podcast and the Student Counselor page, which may be changing names here soon. But the Student Podcast basically is a platform and a community for students in the mental health field. So, master level clinicians, mental health counselors, marriage and family therapists, social workers, anyone in the field of therapy, basically. So,
Awesome, awesome. And then to kind of let people know, like, what are we doing today and like, what is this all about? So I was pretty much scrolling through Instagram and I fell on Victor's page and I was like, ooh, clinical mental health student. I was like, that is me. And I was
yeah.
like, I think I messaged from my personal page and I went and messaged him and I was like, I'll love to set up a Zoom call and see like where this goes and just kind of bring a fruitful conversation. How was it that somebody reached out to you from your perspective?
Oh man, so nice. I get messages all the time. I have followers in my page from like overseas, which I'm like astounded by it sometimes. It's so amazing. So yeah, I'm very, I always encourage people that follow my, my page and my podcast to reach out. So I love getting messages like yours, especially from people like you that are entrepreneurials, right? Thinking of different ways to help others. Like I love that. This is why I created the Student Counselor podcast and page. So I'm very happy that you've reached out.
That's awesome. And so I just wanted to know, like, what's brought you into the field for clinical mental health? Like, where did this journey start for you?
Oh, you want the long story?
Give us a sweet bit story because I feel like it's so dynamic. Like our
Yeah.
journeys as students and then trying to become professionals. It there's so much that happens along the road that like
Yeah.
I want to talk about too.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, becoming a therapist has been a goal of mine for over 10 years now. It all started when I was in high school and my parents got divorced. And I was like trying to be the mediator of the relationship and trying to keep them together. And then I realized I couldn't do that. But what sparked from that was just like realizing how curious I was about why people acted and felt as they did, right? I was just so curious, like, why is this person acting this way? Why is this person receiving the information this way? I was just so curious. And then I started thinking about my own life, like growing up. I'm from Brazil. I moved here when I was 12. And just thinking of how I always gravitated towards helping people or just being more social. And started thinking, what am I going to do? Right. I'm in high school. It was like around junior year time, senior year. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I was a bad student, honestly, to be honest with you, very frankly.
Same here.
But I wanted, I wanted to change my life around. And my girlfriend at the time, I now married her, my high school sweetheart, mentioned that, you should be a therapist or consider, the psychology field. And I was like, that sounds so good, right? I like that. And at that time, I still didn't know what that looked like. I never been to therapy in my life.
Hmm.
But I read a book as well, right? In this path of like trying to understand people, I started reading self-help books. And the first self-help book that I've read was a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff by psychologist Richard Carlson, who's now passed away. And this book like changed my life. I loved it. It was like short short chapters of like things that you can do to like just help you be a better person. And I was like, yeah, this is exactly the kind of stuff I like. Psychology. I want to get into that. So I went to therapy the first time. It was more like a career therapist to align my goals, right? I wanted to become a therapist, but I had never even seen one. So I went to a career counseling to dig deeper into that. And it basically showed me that, yes, you are supposed to be in this human field of helping others, and started my journey to, going to college. I went to community college to start because, again, bad student in high school. And from there, went to FAU, Florida Atlantic University here in South Florida for my bachelor's in psychology. And 10 years later now, I am almost done with my master's in clinical mental health counseling. So very excited. I'm on my last year now, currently as, working as an intern, which is so exciting because you finally get to be a therapist, feel more like a therapist outside of the lectures and outside of the school environment. So yeah, so that's my life. Tell me about yours now.
Yes. And so Denise Morales, right? Raised in Houston, Texas. So Texas my whole life. But I'm first generation Latina, so my parents are from Mexico. And mental health is just not something we talk about in the household. But very similar to you, troubling times happened for me as well. In 2017, I lost a dear friend to suicide, and that pretty much changed the trajectory of my life pretty much. I came to a place where I was like, okay, like, why did this happen? Trying to get an understanding and a grasp of who was there or who was listening, who could have picked up on this, trying to get the whys. And so eventually I just went off to college. I did communications and leadership. I graduated and I was still at a loss. I went into the alcohol industry and I got burned out so fast. And I was
Yeah.
making great money, but I was like, "Why am I so burned out?" I was burned out because they did not align with my personal values, with the things that I allow in my life, like transparency, honesty, trying to like live healthy lifestyles, and supporting people in great ways. And I saw that I was providing a vice for people, like stocking shelves with alcohol, and people were waiting to get drunk off of them. Like that did not make me feel good. And so I was like, I'm done here. And so I buffered in between other jobs. And in that time, I went on the search for like, okay, well, how can I help people? Because throughout my whole lifetime, people have always felt comfortable talking to me, opening up, having discussions. And I've always kind of been the mediator, like the middle ground person, trying to understand like why did that happen? Like, like these are my suggestions, and just trying to
Hmm.
be always like in the middle and unbiased. And finally I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna start my master's. I'm not a studious person. I feel like the only reason I got through college sometimes was because I wanted to participate in the extracurricular. So I needed to have the grades to participate. Like, oh, you want that position, the entrepreneurial side of me, like, oh, you want recruitment, like you need the GPA, stuff like that. And so finally I got into my program at Houston Christian University, that has clinical mental health counseling. And I should be graduating in July. And so I'm also curious, like, where do you reside so that we kind of know the requirements? Because I know different states have different state requirements for students.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And what a story. That's so nice. I know that of course I think a lot of us come with some kind of challenge or something that we've seen or experienced that led us here. So of course, you've had some unfortunate events, but some that led you here. So and I'm sure you're gonna change a lot of lives. But I'm in Florida,
Okay.
currently in Naples, Florida. Ever been this way?
I've been to Florida, never in Naples.
Yeah, so I'm on the west coast of Naples. I used to live on the east coast, like Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. That's where I lived most of my life after moving here from Brazil. I moved here in 2005 when I was 12. I didn't know a word of English. Here I am now, and then what's more recently, I moved to Naples, Florida. Yeah, and like you said, the requirements is super important for students like thinking about this or on the edge of graduating, or even those who are going to be starting a program soon. Like every state is different, right?
Yeah.
The requirements for licensure, even like some states I know require a set amount of different classes. I think Florida like needs like a class that I need to take like outside of the school or something. I'm not sure. Still kind of learning and digging into all of that too. But yeah, it's super important.
Yeah, and it's definitely something hard to get into, and I feel like even being in the midst of my degree, I'm still learning like, wait, so do I need to do that? Like, wait, what am I needing? Like, there's just so much obscurity to it sometimes. But for me, I had to take a practicum, internship one, internship two. I
Yeah.
finished my practicum, and my practicum I had to do 100 hours. And for internship one and two, I think it's up to what is it, 300 and something?
Minus 300 each. I was curious if
Yeah,
yours
it's
is
three.
the
I
same.
think 300 each. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like it direct hours, indirect hours, and like finding
Yes.
what counts as direct, what counts as indirect. And then finally
Yeah.
to get my degree, I do have to take the CPCE exam.
Same, same. For you to even graduate, right?
That's just graduation. And then for me
Yeah.
to actually become licensed, it's like the NCE or right?
And yeah, NCHE or something like that. Yeah,
Don't
we'll
quote
get
me
there
the
when we get
acronym.
there. Yeah, we'll get there when we get there, one at a time. But yeah,
No.
I am always curious, and I'm glad you bring this up. As far as like requirements for the program itself, because I thought you meant more like requirements of like what comes after licensures and things like that. But yeah, the programs itself are also different. Like that's what I've been finding out with my page, which is I love that I get to speak with people across the country, different states, pursuing different programs. And I even made an Instagram reel the other day, just kind of asking students, like, tell me, what does your program require? What does internship look like? Is it even called practicum? Because some schools don't even call it, right? Is it actually 100 hours? Some schools are like 120 hours for practicum. Same degree, same name, but just different things that different school offer, or, different names for things. So super interesting. Mine is basically the same as yours. I'm currently in practicum now. I only need 100, and I'm like a third quarters in, which I'm so happy. Just a little bit, a little bit left. And then I have internship 1 and 2, and they're both 300 hours each. But my school does allow me to group internship 1 and 2 into one pile of hours.
Yeah, like transferring and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Or
so like basically for practicum, it's 100, and it's if I do 120, 150, it's not going to count for the next term, right?
okay.
It's just 100 practicum, it's his own thing. But when you get to internship 1 and 2, each semester is 300 hours, but they basically grouped both semesters into one pile, so it's 600 hours total for internship 1 and 2. So if I get to do 400 hours in the first semester, then it's all counting.
Yeah.
It's different from practicum, but that's one of the things. I don't know if your school does that too.
Yeah, so practicum, like I had to get my 100 hours and I cannot transfer into internship one. So very much if I get 400 hours in my internship one, I can transfer into my internship two. And I'm in this awkward phase where my internship two is in the summer, which means I have less weeks of school. So I have to cram in more hours actually during internship one so I don't have to stress out as much during internship too. Uh,
Mm,
but it's kind of like everything that happens as being a student, I believe sacrifice creates opportunity. And it's been a
yeah,
very sacrificial process to me for me to
yeah.
do my master's and try to get my licensures to be in clinical mental health.
Yeah, most definitely. This is not an easy feat at all. Any master levels degree is probably not. But us counseling students have our set of adversities, right? Like one of them being like unpaid internships. I talk a lot about that on
Are
my
you? I'm unpaid. I'm just on it.
I'm unpaid too. That's what
Okay.
you're unpaid too?
Unpaid.
Yeah, I think I would say 80%. I'm throwing a number out there. Don't quote me here, but 80% I would say of students are probably unpaid. From what I see and hear from, through my community. I'm always like gathering polls, asking people, to share their experience. And from what I notice is mostly unpaid. And it's hard. Like it's an extra amount of duties that you're taking for your day, right? Especially when you get into internship one, which I have that coming up. And it's going to be a lot of hours, and having to do that in between working full time is not easy. It's
Yeah.
not, or running a business like where you're doing there. I don't know how you're doing it, girl.
Well, I had to shift. And that's where that sacrifice that I'm talking about comes in. So I was working full time as a nonprofit and I was already sweating it because I was going to school full time pretty much in the evenings and then full time job during the day. And I knew that internship, when do people receive counseling? It's during the day and some evening times. And
Yeah.
so for me to just get the amount of hours that I need, I was going to need 2 days of a work day to be at my internship. And so
Mm.
I told the nonprofit I was working with, like, I need to step back, reduce my hours. And I did, but I knew I was going to be more stressed during this season. So I told them, I can't come back. And so I'm doing contracting work for them as I can, but full time, I'm doing pretty much my internship, nighttime school, and then I decided to like do entrepreneur stuff with real estate. So I have an Airbnb that's paying my livable costs, so I can just focus on school.
Wow. Wow. You're such an inspiration. Like, I know I'm just getting to meet you, but like,
I know.
this is you're definitely very inspiring. I connect, I gravitate towards people like that that are, just that have that mindset of like pursuing their dreams, doing it, whatever it is that they need to do, doing more, right? Always learning, finding ways to grow financially, personally, in their careers, finding ways to help others. So that's super good. I would love to learn more. If you could tell me more about your business and what you do there with Be Nurture. By the way, nice logo.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like a lot of times we get stuck and we always think we don't have a choice or we don't have an option. But the
Yeah.
reality is that maybe that choice and that option just looks a little bit more riskier or looks more obscured, or it's not the world that's been traveled the most. And so, right, I started Be Nurtured back in 2020. It started with life coaching, and then I decided to take a change in direction and turn it into a nonprofit, and I
Mm,
officially got my designation as a nonprofit last week. But
nice.
have my board members, thank you. And so I have a podcast that comes out every month on Sunday at 5 p.m. Central. And then I have workshops that I try to do on a quarterly basis in self-help groups, and then
Okay.
just tackling opportunities. But my main importance is providing psychoeducation information to communities where mental health is just not talked about, especially in the Latin community. For me, it's like, "Oh, you're depressed? Oh, it's because you haven't cleaned your room." Like, it's just like things like, "Oh, I
You
don't
just
know,"
need to
just
go
like
outside.
very superstitious, or like, "Oh, it's because you're lazy." It's completely, like, irrelevant instead of saying, "Maybe you are depressed. Like, what is going on? Like, what is affecting
Yeah.
you?"
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
put it in the rug. But, you say you're from Brazil, and I wanted to know, in your counseling, are you practicing in another language?
Like in internship now?
Yeah.
No, no, no. Just all English. That would be nice. That would be nice. But no, just English. But I would plan in the future, I plan to have my own private practice. I would see clients in Portuguese, most definitely.
Awesome, awesome. So
Yeah.
what's the direction that you see? So you mentioned like having a business. So where's the trajectory? Because you started this 10 years ago, and I
Yeah.
like you're at the tipping of the iceberg of going into
Yeah.
the future. So what does that look?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I've done so many different things throughout my life, but I've always again known that I wanted to become a therapist. And now that it's here, like at the finish line, and I'm seeing, I'm happy I created a podcast. It was more to to find a way to talk about my journey with others, instead of just having to talk to my closest friend group and family members on my own social media. I was like, I'll just create a podcast. I don't see anyone talking about their student journey on these podcasts. I didn't find anything related to students in the master level field, right? Mental health. And I was like, I'm just gonna do my own. So doing that, opening the podcast, of course, I started then bringing on guests, which honestly, even what we're doing now sounds like something I do every other month. Uh, and I, bring on guests, current students, and also licensed professionals to, talk about their journeys, what brought them to this field, future aspirations, or, for those who are already working, kind of learning from them more about the field, and just helping others, providing that kind of level of support, right? And shared relatable experiences. So, because this podcast has grown so much and the page is constantly growing online as well, I've basically noticing the gap
Mhm.
um, in like the help and support that students at this level need, especially with the growth of online programs, which I'm an online program now. I don't know if you
That's
told
rough.
me.
I've had
Yeah,
to do hybrid. So like I sometimes
yeah,
person, but then I feel really mentally absent if it's not
yeah.
in person. So it's hard.
It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone, indeed. But there's two different types of online programs. Not to get too much off topic, but we have, of course, the synchronous and the asynchronous. So I'm in a synchronous program. So we still have classes weekly through
Okay.
Zoom or whatever. So we still are connecting and meeting with others. We just don't have that interaction where you like out of class and you're going to talk to your friend or go grab a coffee together. So that, of course, that bond doesn't exist. And basically, so from the note, what I'm noticing is because of the online programs growing so much, there's so many out there since COVID. it, Students are just kind of left on their own, regardless that they're in a synchronous program or in an asynchronous program where they're just basically doing everything themselves with no classes, which props to those. I don't know how they do that. But in general, regardless of the program, I'm noticing that students just need more support, through their graduate programs, just feeling insecure sometimes for starting practicum, right? Or even finding an internship site. Some schools offer that kind of level of support. Other schools don't. And I have people that are constantly coming to me and asking questions. Hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? Hey, can you, just support me through this? What do you think about this? Or constantly messaging. And I'm like, helping everyone as much as I can, which I love. Again, this is why I created this community. But now it's got me in, now that I'm getting towards the end of the program, I'm like, man, I think that this is what I want to do, right? I want to continue to help this population, but I can't give myself to everyone
Right.
because then
You're one person.
I can't fully help them the way that they deserve to be helped or the kind of help that they need. So sometimes those conversations are minimum because I can't fully engage with everyone that reaches out. So thinking about what to do next in this business I always imagine myself still being a therapist and providing therapy for the population that I gravitate towards, but also continuing to help students in a consulting level, right? Graduate students. So that's something that still new. Perhaps, it's not there yet. But it's been on the back of my mind a lot. And seeing people like you, like there are still students and doing these kinds of things are so inspiring. So like that's
Thank
why I'm
you.
happy to be here.
No, no, and thank you for the work that you do, honestly, because what you did is you identified a need and you said, "What in me can I have to provide for this need?" And you like had to be self-efficacy, like you had to do it on your own and say, "Okay, what can I provide?" And so starting the podcast, starting social media pages, finding people that can provide insight and information, all of those things are to a lot of people, those don't things don't come naturally. So you had a lot of that willpower in you to get it done and provide a service to the community. And so thank you for the things that you do.
Thank you. You're so nice. Yeah, well, I'm doing my the best I can. I think a lot of people appreciate the community there. I share a lot of good resources where I think in general people like that they see someone going through it with them, right? Me as a student right now, of course, I won't be a student forever, but just being able to relate to those students like that really helps. And of course, there's some humor in there and people like that online these days. And it definitely helps.
Sure. And you I was trying to remember at kind of what aspect of providing this type of service and noticing that it was important. So even for me in my in-person classes, there's a small population of Latinos that are going into counseling. And so I was like, man, I feel like we even need a support group as student counselors to be like, internship was hard today. Like
Yeah,
I
let's
picking
talk
up on
about
this.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, like, can we talk about how like rough internship has been or just catching up because you're pretty much picking up a new job that is
Yeah.
unpaid, it's but you're learning the ropes of this clinic or environment. But I wanted to know, how did you get your practicum and what kind of services does your practicum provide?
Oh yeah, most definitely. So yeah, I'm in practicum now. I'm at a behavioral health center that mostly focuses on substance abuse, but they see all kinds of mental health disorders. So substance abuse is great because for your hours at least as a student because they offer a lot of groups. So I'm in groups a lot, IOP groups, intensive outpatient program. I think that's what it stands for. Uh, I often forget. But so yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I just actually saw my very first individual client this week, which I was like ecstatic and so excited, of course, to be able to do that. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of groups. I've actually led a few groups already. I've led about 4 or 5 groups at this point. So that's been fun, of course. But now that I have this client, I'm gonna see this client weekly, so that's exciting too. And now internship coming up. I have the choice of either staying there or finding something else. So I'm kind of in between that. I've been talking to other people, seeing what I need. I've actually found the place that's gonna take me in. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Awesome. For
Yeah,
us, you mentioned earlier, like some universities help you find an internship and others don't. I feel like
yeah.
they gave me a list of internships, but they gave the same list to all the students we have, so they can only take
Yeah,
the
imagine 300 students receiving an email.
and here's five
Yeah.
so that's kind of what happened to us. And so what I ended up doing, I ended up going to Facebook and I found a counselors networking page for Houston on Facebook groups. And I posted my need on there. I said, hey, I'm a student. I'm looking for a practicum. And like, this is the time period, and give them some information. And counselors started replying and said, this is my email me and call me.
Oh,
I
nice.
sent them an email, had 2 interviews set up, and then I chose the one that I felt best fit for me. But before I even got to that point, I think I did a Google search of all the counseling firms that were around me in the area. I found all of their emails and then sent like a template email saying, "Hey, my name is Denise Morales. I'm a student," and see,
Da-da-da-da.
I was trying to cast the net and see like
Yeah.
what was I gonna catch. And so I did. And ours, the practicum and internship that I ended up going for, focuses on personal injury. So
Mhm.
whenever lawyers or physicians, after some traumatic event, mainly car accidents is what I see. So car accidents, or sometimes you'll get very unique situations like explosives or falls or something where the person got really traumatized off a personal injury. And doing the mental health evaluations is where I am. So for me, my practicum, they only let us focus on intaking the patient. So we only did like their session 1, which is all assessments. And then session 2 and session 3 was more like coping tools, mechanisms. And then the session 3 was like termination, but seeing where they were and then just completing their evaluation.
Mm.
I like you, I didn't get too many non-PI patients. But I am now at a point where I have like 3 or 4. Um, and then one that's like pretty much long term. I think we're going on to like our 4th session. And
Oh,
it's
nice.
different. And you mentioned that like you're going from a group aspect, you function different as a therapist there. And then having to function with a long-term counseling patient, you function a little bit different there too, because it's a different setting.
Yeah, most definitely. And for me, that's always what I've envisioned, like doing individual setting sessions, right? Even group is a little bit more new to me. I love it. It's super, like, it's a great way to help a lot of people all at once. And it's nice when you see the group kind of connecting with each other, helping each other. But I think individual session is always what I've imagined myself doing. So, getting to that now, it's super cool. So are you in internship 1, you said?
Internship one, yes.
Okay, got it. And you
So
said you're graduating in July. So when are you starting internship 2?
internship still starts in May.
Okay.
So
Okay.
May,
Almost there.
July. Mm-hmm.
Almost there. Almost there. You excited?
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm excited. Like I've told you, this time has been very much a sacrifice, and I'm just ready to also just get into that next phase of licensure. I want to eventually have Be Nurtured as a clinic, as well, providing a space for therapists and the environment. I know we have switched to the virtual world, and a lot of my sessions are virtual, but there's
Hmm.
something about in person, and if there's some
Yeah.
a different environment that I can provide to incline people to come and have this experience in person, I want to advocate for that.
Totally. Yes, I'm on the same boat. Like, I personally love going to therapy in person myself.
Mhm.
I've always done it in person. I've done a very few times over telehealth, and it's never been my thing. Maybe because I work from home now too, so I'm constantly home. Like, give me a it gives me a chance to get out. Um, but yeah, I've always loved in person. I know that's like ultimately the goal. I may start the, whenever I start my business and actually graduate and make this into a private practice, it may start as telehealth student. I don't have to get an office space right away. Again, these are just thoughts, right? But the goal itself is to have a physical place to help others. Even though the telehealth component is going to be a big thing, especially for me working with students. Like, I don't want to only be able to limit myself to those students around me, and telehealth in general, like I'm sorry, therapy in general, that's going to be open to other people. But at the same time, I also don't want to limit to those only around me. What if there's a great client that really connects with me? Maybe they found me online, like, oh man, I want you to be my therapist, and he doesn't live here. Then, I think I want to be able to offer that too, and that's important. I think, I would say probably more more often than not now, therapists are kind of leading at least to a hybrid situation. Even though there might still be some there that still only do in person, but I think at the very least a hybrid situation, if not fully telehealth.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And I'm open to all modes of communication, but definitely
Mm.
advocating for that in person. But
Yeah, same.
you kind of mentioned earlier that like you had never been in a clinical setting or been to a counselor before kind of getting into the practice, or like getting into schooling for it. I myself have never been to a counselor. None of my family members have been to a counselor. But whenever I went to college, I was seeking career counselors and I was going to the advisors and I was always asking for help. And so I think my first experience with an actual counselor ended up being couples counseling. Um,
Oh,
and so couples counseling was the first time, and I was already in my degree. So this wasn't that long ago. Um, but that was like my first time being in the setting and it was in person and it was just very moving. And I was like, okay, like for sure. I feel like that also solidified, like, this is what I got to
it's
do.
great.
And that's
That,
what's crazy too. A lot of people think that counselors shouldn't have any problems, but it's like counselors have counselors too.
yeah, I'll say we probably need more therapy than most.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through to through therapy different points of my life. Um, but yeah, I grew up in a family, being Brazilian, Latino. I grew up in a family, in a community, or even a society back in Brazil where I didn't even know what a therapist was or a psychologist. Like, I just, yeah, saw it in movies and knew they existed, but it was always like, oh yeah, you got to be crazy to go there, like you don't need it. Just go take a walk or go play something outside and you be okay. Not, I never felt like I needed growing up, but I don't see how it could have, it wouldn't be a bad thing, right? So moving here, like going to therapy at my during my adolescent years was a personal choice, right? I was contemplating becoming a therapist. I might as well go to therapy, see what that even is like. So that's what I
Right.
decided to do. And I went at that point and then never went again. Started, going to school. Eventually I did go back and I went to a couple therapists by myself. Though I've had my own dilemmas to deal with, and I saw a marriage and family therapist, and I was like, "Ooh, cool, marriage and family therapist, huh?" Which is so interesting. I don't know if you went through this. This is kind of reminding me of what that was like for me back then, because when I decided I wanted to be a therapist, I didn't even know like the master level degree existed. I've always just said to myself, I want to become a psychologist. I want to become a psychologist. That was the only word I used, right? And come to find out, to become a psychologist, getting a PhD, I was like, that's a lot of work.
I didn't I didn't know that either. And I feel like the general population and maybe where that's where psychoeducation comes in. Because I've noticed that some of my patients be like, oh, sí, estaba esperando la llamada de la psicóloga. Like I was waiting for the call for the psychologist. And I'm like, I'm not a psychologist, I'm just like the counselor therapist. But I'm like, let's not
Yeah.
get into that. Like I'm
Yeah,
still
yeah, yeah.
here.
That it's a lot to explain. I think it's probably the Spanish culture, the Latino culture is the same in Brazil. We don't have like therapists and then psychologists. There are just all psychologists. That's what it is.
That's fine. Just give me the PhD for free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, even though there is some of them are not PhD level, they're still considered psychologists, which is so interesting, how it is over there. So I've always thought I'm going to be a psychologist, I'm going to be a psychologist. So when I went to therapy the second time in my life, I was seeing a marriage and family therapist. That's when I was like, oh, so she's a marriage and family therapist with a master's degree. Okay, I like that route. That's when I started investigating more, and I even contemplated about going to a marriage and family therapist route. But then I stumbled upon clinical mental health counseling. I was like, oh no, this is the one. This is right here what I want. But I found this out like later after my bachelor's degree. Like I had no idea. I was still thinking
So kind of,
psychologist, psychologist.
and I still think about it like, do I want to go and push for a degree? But I'm like, the real difference there is that like I can prescribe drugs. And I'm like,
Yeah,
do I even care to prescribe the drugs? I don't. And I
yeah,
think that's like my personal choice, but I feel like I'm sufficient with getting my master's and just doing clinical mental health counseling and taking a different initiative and aspect because I also kind of want to support counselors in the counseling field.
yes.
So it's like if I can provide like um a location where it's like this is your counselor hub for in person and have an office and stuff like that. Like I want to have that one day.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's where do you live again? I know you mentioned it.
Houston, Texas.
Yes, yeah, you did say that 3 times, but I forgot.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to mention or let us know? Definitely want to tell followers where we can follow up with you and anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, honestly, I think that I completely agree with you there. I'm on the same boat when it comes to like helping counselors, especially those are they're just starting this journey. I help a lot of students that are just finishing their undergrad or those thinking of, changing careers who haven't been in school in a long time and contemplating doing a master's in counseling or marriage and family therapy or even social work. um they just need that kind of level of support, and they just want to talk to someone about it, right? And it's often like when if they just reach out to schools, someone from the school is going to reach out, and of course they're going to try to sell it to you. That's often not what they're looking for. It helps, right? Because you find out about the pricing, what the school structure is like, but at the same time, like people are seeking more support, especially with the growth of the online program. So like that's what I'm here for. Like if I can help in any way, like if even people in Houston or as you connect with people across the country, feel free to send them my way as they need that kind of level of support and help. That's what the community is all about. And eventually, as I solidify the business side and the business ideas that I have, and how to continue to provide that kind of more in depth support to students, then of course that will be all updated and announced on my platforms. I think perhaps it will be something more towards internship. That's what I'm noticing, like kind of helping students prepare for internship or find an internship site. That's one of the ideas that I have. So if you have anyone that's needs help with that across the country, I have tools that I've used throughout my life, especially through the work that I do now full time, that I think I'm very good at like finding information, contacting others. So I think that would be a nice support system for students. So that's what I'm here for. That's what my community is all about, supporting that kind of those in the program or those thinking about doing one of these programs. So the Student Counselor podcast has a lot of that kind of content as well. Great conversations there with other students, licensed professionals about our field. So
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. And it's definitely needed everything you do. And in the process, as we continue to grow and just finish out our degrees, it's like study prep is going to be important. Internship, moving, or an extra opinion, everything is going to count and everything is going to matter for that as well.
yeah, most definitely. And what you do too is very inspiring, honestly. And I would love to stay in touch and pick your brains because it's super inspiring to see students doing that kind of stuff early on without even graduating. Like internship is already busy, like you said, right? It's not an easy thing to do. So just having that mindset to pursue other things and finding other ways to help, like it's definitely inspiring to me, even just getting to know you now. So we'll love to
Yeah.
continue to pick your brain as on that aspect of business side and how you help others, even the coaching. Like that's kind of what I want to do with students. So That would be definitely something cool to continue to talk about.
And we definitely have programming available that is virtual. So we try to make things virtual. So for our larger span of audience, because I do have some support that comes from Colorado. And so the support is growing. So I'm like, okay, some of our programming does need to be virtual. One of our self help groups that is coming up, it's about breaking generational trauma. We're going to have an
Mm.
in-person session in April, and then we're going to move to a virtual close group self-help group that is going to probably be the month after, so in May.
Oh,
Mm.
okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. That's and with the how about the individual coaching that you do? How does that work?
So right now I'm not doing any individual coaching. I'm just focusing on more of like larger programming instances, and speaking engagements. That's where I am. Mhm.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice. So you're a speaker too, huh?
Yeah, so I've been doing speaking engagements, but I am certified as a mediator. So I've been reaching out to our like Harris County judges, so like the courts, because they are always looking for free mediators. And so there is a connector, like a connection network of mediators that do it volunteer based. And that's something I also did in my undergrad. I did a mediation for sororities and fraternities, and I still do it now. So they still call me back and they're like, "Hey, can you come mediate like this group of girls or something like that?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'll come back."
Yeah. And what made you change from the business that you had into the nonprofit?
So whenever Be Nurtured initially started, it was just me posting encouragement videos, like inspirational, motivational. And then I started creating digital content such as planners. And so I still have planners for sale on Amazon. I do like customize like to-do lists and monthly planners. And I also have a reflection journal that's like every single day for 365 days. Um,
Nice.
and I was like, okay, well, now I have like the education behind it. Now I know kind of how to support this community a little bit more. Let me move it into this round. And then by that time, I was the first time I started working into the nonprofit sector, which was a year and a half ago. And so I started getting to know that my skills are very much transferable, and I know how to build a program from a ground up. I'm really good at startups. And so I was like, I know what tools I need. I know what it is to market. I know what it is to recruit. Now I just have to apply it to this field of mental health.
Yeah. That's all. That's very cool. Well, what would you say to for students that are still in their programs and want to know what life could be like outside of this, right? And like
Mm.
making more than just doing more than just therapy, I guess. What would you say to that?
Um, I feel like we're always waiting to the degree to tell us that we're professionals. You're the professional now. You can tell yourself, I can get this started now. There's nothing holding you back to saying, I can see this. Everything's based off a tree for me because I believed in if I see this, if I grow it, if I water it, if I nurture it, it's going to grow to be something. And I felt so anxious to get this started. I was like, I'm not going to wait 2, 3 years for me to finish my degree, for me to start my passion now. And so if you have a passion, if you have a certain inclination, pour into that inclination, be curious about it, Google it, go see who else is doing it. And if there's something that's not being served and you feel like you can do it, do it little by little. Open up an Instagram page, start a podcast, maybe record yourself, maybe journal, start a blog, talk to other people about it, bounce ideas. There's no harm in being curious. And you can always say, at least I gave it a try. And I wanted to say, I gave myself the opportunity in the try.
Ah, that's so inspiring. Yeah, not a lot of students are definitely thinking beyond the classroom when they're doing these programs. So it's super
I don't blame them.
inspiring. Yeah, I don't blame it. It's a lot. I don't blame them either. A lot of students I know are working full time. They have kids. It's not easy and it's not a requirement for you to, think about this stuff so big. Not everyone is meant to do that. And it's not a problem if you're not. It's totally okay. We're all different people, right? But if you have goals, if you have aspirations and desires, I completely agree with you. Just like go for them, right? Starting a podcast, writing a book, you could just start doing that now, little
Mm,
by little, and eventually you're gonna see, your work be nurtured
yes.
and
And
come to life.
And I think the most important thing, it's like it's gonna evolve and it's gonna grow and it's gonna shift and it's gonna change, and it's okay to adapt to those changes, because even for you, you're mentioning going into another phase and you're gonna have to adjust to maybe a different aspect of your business. And it was the same thing for me. I adjusted, I'm being flexible, I'm listening to the changes that are happening around me. So just be flexible, be adaptable, and be open to seeing what next opportunity can come up.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I appreciate you so much. Uh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I really enjoyed the convo. Thank you for reaching out. However you want to do this, you have my permission. It's recorded here. Just share it. Don't even ask me. I'm okay with everything we discussed.